Dear learners and listeners, Namaskar. I am Dr. Shweta and today we are going to begin our discussion with the new topic which is Attention and Perception Part 1. As we all know, in the last program we discussed about the sense organs, that is, how do we experience the world around us. Today we are going to talk about attention and perception, which means that although there are large number of stimuli which are around us, but only few stimuli attract our attention. When you walk through a busy street, a large number of stimuli bombard your sense organs, but you can take in and use only a very small number of stimuli. For example, a number of people crisscross each other wearing different colored dresses. Cars and buses pass through on the nearby road. Shops and buildings also attract your attention. However, only a small and selected part of the available stimulation is registered by an individual for processing and the rest is filtered out. This process of selectively responding to a stimulus or range of stimuli is called attention. Thus, attention refers to all those processes by which we perceive selectively. We have already discussed about becoming aware of the world around us, that we have 10 senses which provide us information about the external and internal world. But some central regulatory mechanism allows selective pickup of the information. Have you ever thought that the dish antenna on the roof of your home can pick up all the signals that are available there, but the tuner in the television set selects only the signal that you want to view. Others are filtered out. Similarly, from a large number of stimuli that are available in the external world, attentional processes limit the reception of stimuli selectively. Thus, attentional processes serve the tuner function in filtering information selectively for further processing that finally leads to perception. Now, this is what my objective for today's program. After today's program, you will be able to explain the nature and functions of attention, describe the process of perception and explain perception of shape and illusion. Let's begin with the first objective, which is attention and its component processes. Attention is a central process and perception is not possible without attentional processes. That means attention precedes perception. That means attention happens first and only then we can perceive things. Attentional processes serve various functions in the organization of our perceptions and other cognitive functions. The various functions of attention are: number 1, the alerting function; number 2, the selective function; number 3, limited capacity channel; number 4, vigilance. Now, let us talk about these functions briefly. First of all, what is alerting function? Now, carefully observe a cat poised at the mouse hole. If you look at the cat carefully in such a situation, you will observe that the ears of the cat are directed towards the mouse hole. That is why, to receive the slightest sound of movement inside the hole. Eyes are converged and focused on the hole. Why? To get visual image of the mouse as it tries to come out. There is a complete physiological and mental preparedness to catch the prey. This is a very good example of alertness, that how do we get ourselves alerted. What we call an alerting function of attention. You will notice that the cat is allocating all its available attentional resources, and this demonstrates the alerting nature of attention. Let us take another example to demonstrate the alerting nature of attention. When the teacher asks the student in the classroom to pay attention to what he or she is teaching. It means that the student can voluntarily create conditions that prepare him or her to be receptive and alert in the class. Attention in this sense refers to a state of focused awareness with readiness to respond. For example, if asked some question, distractions occurs when some interference, example loud noise, prevents the individual to continue with the ongoing task. I can quote the example of attention from Mahabharata as well, when Arjun was asked to target the eye of the fish or the bird. He could see a lot of stimuli that were around him, but he chose to attend to and be alertive to the eye only. That is, he was attending to only one stimuli which was around him. Now, let's talk about the next function of attention, which is known as selective function. The most important function of attention is selectivity. Selectivity refers to a process by which attention is focused on stimulus or stimuli of ongoing interest and other stimuli are ignored. Selective attention acts as a filter that allows some information in and the other unwanted out. The best example of selective attention is that of tea party effect, in selective listening, generally referred to as cocktail party effect. For example, just imagine you are in a tea party organized by your friend. You will observe that in such parties, people take some snacks and cup of tea and stand and chat in small groups of 4 to 5 people. You're busy chatting with your friend in such one group. When conversation was going on, you suddenly hear someone mentioning your name in one of the adjoining groups. What happens then? Your attention is diverted from your friend to whom you were talking to the group from where you heard your name. Your friend is still talking to you, but your attention is diverted to the other side to listen what someone there is saying about you. Apparently, you pose that you are listening to what your friend is talking, but you are unable to register anything because you are not at all interested in what your friend is saying, but you are very much interested in what the other person who is in a different group is saying about you. This example demonstrates that we can selectively attend to one task at a time. The ongoing task in this case is ignored. And what is the ongoing task? That is, your friend is talking to you. Let us come up to the third function of attention, which is known as limited capacity channel. It has been established through research that we have limited capacity to process information that is available in the outside world. Do you think that you can process everything which is around you? No, it is humanly not possible. That is, tasks that require attentional resources cannot be carried out simultaneously because we have limited capacity to process the incoming information. We process the task one at a time, which is called serial processing. Let us take one example. If you are asked to listen to music as well as read something, you cannot carry out both the tasks simultaneously or in parallel. If you attend to music, then during this period, you are not able to comprehend what you were reading, or you would not be able to register the lyrics of the song. That means when the task requires attentional resources, when the task is difficult, you can carry on with one task at a time, and it is known as serial processing. Carrying out two tasks simultaneously is not possible. However, if one task is highly practiced or routinized, then it is possible to carry on with two tasks simultaneously. Let's take one example from daily life. When you are practiced driver, that is you are a very efficient driver, you can drive the car as well as have conversation with the other person sitting by your side. This is possible because driving requires little or no attentional resources or mental effort. And why it is so? Because of high level of practice of driving, and you can pay attention to what the other person is talking. This condition is called automaticity in information processing. In this sense, we are serial processors. That means two or more tasks that require complex cognitive processing cannot be carried out simultaneously. The bottleneck is at the central level, that is in the brain. That is, the brain is not able to handle two or more tasks simultaneously. In this case, computer is better than human beings in that it can process information in parallel. So, before I switch on to the next function of attention, I just want to make this very point clear to you that although we cannot process two tasks that require your cognitive attention at one time, simultaneously processing two tasks is not possible. But when one task is highly practiced, then you can process two tasks simultaneously, like you drive and you can also talk to the other person who is sitting besides you. Let's take up the another function of attention, which is known as vigilance function. Now, what is vigilance? Have you ever seen that how the sepoy at the border is always vigilant about what is happening around him? So, maintaining attention on a task continuously for some time, like looking at the radar screen, is called vigilance or sustained attention. It has been found that attending to a task for long is taxing, particularly if the task is monotonous, and it leads to decrease in performance. Now, let us come up to the next objective of today's program, which is creating a world of reality, that is perception. That means we sense something, then we attend to particular stimulus and register it, and after that how do we give name to that stimuli? We live and deal with a three-dimensional world which can contain objects of different shapes and forms, sizes and colors. Generally, our experience of the external world is quite accurate and error-free. However, we do encounter illusions. For example, perceiving a rope in the night as snake. To survive and live in this world, we must get accurate information from the environment around us. This information is gathered by, as we have already discussed, by the sense organs, which are 10 in all. 8 of these sense organs, as we all know, are vision, audition, smell, taste, touch, warmth, cold and pain, and these are the external sense organs. And 2 internal or deep senses are vestibular and the kinesthetic senses. We have already talked about these 10 sense organs in the previous programs, which is becoming aware of the world around us. And now let us understand what is perception. How do we construct a world of reality from the information that we receive from our sense organs? The difference between sensation and perception is not clearly mentioned. Where one ends and other starts is arbitrary. You do not know when the sensation stops and when does the perception begins. It is never clear. Most psychologists treat perception as interpretation of sensation. That is what I said, that something has been sensed, registered, attended to, registered, and now you are giving meaning to it. That is, perception is interpretation of sensation. For the purpose of scientific investigation, we consider the sensory system to include reception of stimulation by sensory organs, that is transduction, which is transmission of neural impulses through efferent neurons and reaching the appropriate area in the cerebral cortex. Example, visual stimulation reaching the occipital lobe in the cerebral cortex. Let us discuss how our sensory system gathers information from the external and internal world. We will also talk about by taking into account past experiences, knowledge, memory, motivation, cultural background, beliefs and attitude etc. from internal system, the brain makes sense out of the signals that it receives from different sense organs. Thus, how we receive information from the external world and with the help of internal system, we construct a world of reality. This is all that we study in perception. We have already considered the role of attention in perception. Thus, multiple and complex nature of stimulation is available to us from the external world, and with the operation of attentional processes, we selectively receive some information and filter out the rest. Now, we will talk about some of the important aspects of perception. Let us consider the first aspect, which is how do we perceive the shape around us. The terms shape and form are often used interchangeably. The study of shape perception raises many questions, such as how do we perceive shape? Is our ability to perceive shape and form innate or learned? How do we segregate figure from ground? Are there laws that govern the organization of perception? What are illusions and why do these illusions exist? There are some questions that we try to explore here. First of all, how do we perceive shape? Shape or form is defined as areas of visual fields that are set off from the rest of the field by visible contour. For example, when you are watching this program, there is a shape in the form of the tutor or the presenter who comes up to your eyes, and there is a background at the back. So, the shape is coming out of the background. Werner in 1935 demonstrated how contours are perceived and their role in the perception of shape or form. What is contour? The boundaries. To perceive a shape, its contours must be sharp enough to mark off region that is called shape. Let's talk about figure and ground. I have just talked about that there is a figure which is emerging out of the ground in this program as well. Figure in the form of the presenter and background which you can see at the back of the figure, and background which you can see at the back of the presenter. Now, let us discuss about it more. Imagine if figure ground segregation was not there, how confusing the world would have been for us. Perhaps perceptual organization would not be possible. For example, there is this figures in which the random shape stands out as a figure and page becomes background. Another example, whatever is written on the blackboard by a teacher becomes a ground. You cannot read anything on the blackboard until and unless the figure, which is the words, is segregated from the background, that is, and the background in this case is the blackboard. In our visual field, whatever we look out in the environment around us, some area is segregated to form figure and the rest is relegated to the background. You may be sitting in your room and you will find that there is a figure which is maybe some other person is sitting and a background behind him or her which can be the decoration which is there in the room. In our visual field, whatever we look out in the environment around us, some area is segregated to form figures and rest is relegated to the background. That is the part which is not important for us, against which the figures are perceived. For example, you can see the presenter, but at the background, maybe the presenter is important because the presenter is delivering, but at the background what is there is not that important. Figure ground segregation is essential for the perception of shape. It is not only the characteristics of visual perception, it is there in all sense modalities. For example, when you listen to the music, the vocal part of music, what a singer sings becomes figure, and the instrumental part is relegated to the background. If the listener is interested in the instrumental part, which is the figure of the music, then the vocal parts becomes ground. Let us know how this occurs. The distinction between figure and ground is presented in the following figure. The figure has a shape, while the ground is relatively shapeless. The ground seems to extend behind the figure. The figure has some of the characteristics of a thing, whereas the background appears like unformed material. The figure usually tends to appear in front, the ground behind. The figure is more impressive, meaningful and better remembered. So dear learners, this was all about that what is attention, what is selective attention, how do we attend to the information, how do we give meaning to that information, that is interpret that information, which is perception, and how do we perceive shapes. This was all for today's program. We shall meet for continuation of our discussion on perception in the next video. Thank you.